Hey, everybody, welcome back to the Multipliers Leadership Podcast. We are so excited for you to be jumping back in with us again today. We're privileged to be able to have our guest, Don Manning, who's going to be on the podcast with us today as our guest. And Don has done everything from a COO of a company to running a ministry, and does a quite extensive amount of stuff, has a large family. He's got 7 kids as well, and manages to still balance it all in a successful way. And I know that you're going to be encouraged as you listen to Don talk about both his story and journey of where he is with the Lord now, but also everything that's happened kind of leading up to that. And so Don, welcome to the podcast.
Oh, thank you so much, Joseph. Thank you. Glad to be here.
Yeah, so Don, you and I, we go back several years, and I've had the privilege to get to know you and your family over those years, and man, a lot of really good memories that are there. But Don, as I mentioned a few things that you already kind of have done or are doing, and give us kind of an insight, like what is it that you're doing now? Like what's your life consist of now that's keeping kind of the majority of your focus and time during this season?
So you mentioned I have 7 kids. Also, Joseph, you failed to mention I coach.
Not a small number. Not a small number.
Not a small number. And one of those kids played basketball with your wife, and I coached your wife in basketball. So if you remember, you didn't remember that because you weren't there yet. You were,
but she's told me about it. Yeah.
So we have Joseph and I go back even further than he thinks in some ways because of that connection with his wife and family. But so we do have 7 kids, and just a couple of things. You asked about today, but in order to get to today, I probably need to go back to and give a little bit of history. 7 kids, same church for 30 years. We've baptized all 7 of my kids in our church. And so one of the things I value as a leader is the involvement in the local church. One of the things that's been in true of my life is we've gone deep with a few things. And where we've gone deep with a few things has been such a blessing. It led to where we are today. I'm a CPA by trade. Made my way towards being a chief financial officer in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. But as my family grew, the Lord called me home. And so I bought a business and started to be an entrepreneur, going from the CFO role to more of an entrepreneurial role. Wound up in the real estate business. That's where I was a COO, running a local real estate company and doing investment deals that I've been doing for many years. And but all that time, I'm raising a family, and I'm involved in our church. And so when you have 7 kids and they're turning out pretty well, we have 4 girls and then 3 boys. So I have 4 at the time. This is in the second decade of our marriage and parenting. I've got 4 teenage daughters. And people start, what were we going to say?
Teenage daughters. I have a daughter, and I'm nervous for those years. So I'm looking to you for some advice and wisdom here. All right.
Well, we had a lot of fun with those girls, and but people started asking us, the same questions. I don't know about you, Joseph, but when you find parents that you like their kids, you tend to ask them what they're doing. When what's going on. And so we started getting the same questions we were asking others. And that led to us teaching at our church younger parents. We just felt like that was really something God really put on our heart, to teach younger parents. And so fast forward, that led to a class we taught at church, which led to years later us writing a book. And we called it Crazy Cool Family. Because it's and I need to get you the updated version of that. We've made it prettier since then. That led to a ministry we've started over the last few years, and that has a nationwide reach now with a simple vision to help Christian parents raise godly kids and be connected with all their kids. And so I've kind of made this transition in my life from a full-time COO with 7 kids, coaching sports teams and everything, to last year I left that position completely. I'd kind of gone part-time. I was working with a very good friend of mine who was generous. He knew my heart for ministry. And so a lot of transition with that to where now we're other than some business interests, some independent business interest, my wife and I are full time in our ministry, and I'm 58 years old, so I've transitioned to another season of life that we hope to we were at a conference, you and I just were last weekend, and somebody said, man, the worst thing you can tell about an old man is he's set in his ways. That's not going to be me. This next season of life, so looking for everybody. Some of my friends are retiring. I'm like, I don't ever want to retire. I want to be, I think that what we do is we transition our life more into ministry, more into our family. And that's what I'm working on doing right now.
Oh, well, I think that's a beautiful setup for us to have even just a good snapshot of kind of where you've been, but also your time, effort, energy. And Don probably want to be the one to say this. I'm going to say it for him. He has incredible kids. He has an incredible family. And I've been privileged just to watch a few kind of grow up along the way in my season. And I'll just tell you, they are a blessing to whoever they come in contact with. And obviously, Don, and not to be left out, Suzanne, his bride, who is incredible, have done an incredible job raising their family. So I think there's a lot to be able to learn for each of us when it comes to be able to build good relationships and a good culture within the context of the family. But Don, you mentioned growing deep with a few specific things, and which I think that's just a wisdom nutshell, or a nutshell of wisdom there for us to be able to grab a hold of. But I see that you're starting to kind of whittle down some of that time that you have as far as the work is considered, but you still have a ministry, you still have a family, you've got grandkids that are either here or coming, and really half of those are here in God's country in Arkansas. The others are in Texas. But how do you balance that time, Don? Like how do you choose, like, man, how am I going to prioritize my life in leading at the high level that you're leading currently?
Well, I think, first of all, that's probably one of my largest challenges in life. And I think so often the reason for that is because of our motivations. Like, I have this tremendous motivation to want to take care of everyone. And when you have 7 kids and when you're married and there's a lot of people, that you're doing business with and ministry with, many times I find myself dictated by what others want rather than what's the most important things that the Lord's telling me to do. And so that may be everybody from my mom to my wife to my business partner to, even, a podcast, thing I've got to get on or whatever it is. And so I really try to, and it's funny, I told you that I left my position in last year to go full time. And so for the first time in my life, I don't have to be anywhere. Okay. So, and I say this for a reason because I think it's super insightful. Because I used to blame everything on my job. And now when I've been away from it for 9 months and I found out the problem is me. And I used to think that the problem was everyone else. Now I've taken away all the barriers and I found out, the problem is me. And so and it's been a really interesting thing to have to readjust my life to where it really is all about my time and I can commit to whatever I want. And I still find I'm distracted sometimes. So, some of the things I've done that really helps that is, one is, and this sounds simple, but I make a new to-do list every weekday. And so, and it's not an old to-do. I even found that I couldn't make an old to-do list because I kept just letting things roll. But every day, and I'm probably, since I've been doing it a few months, I'm probably about 80%, at getting it done. I've got to be able to live. That's another thing I think that we got to do is so often we start things and we strive for perfection and we don't hit it and then we don't do them anymore. So, and that's just it's not realistic really. But in that, when I do that, every day I wake up and I say, okay, after my time with the Lord, and I say, what are my key things today? And that's really helped me to prioritize. It could be I'm writing something for the ministry. It could be I need to work on something for. Lately, it's been income taxes. I've had to do a bunch of stuff with my entities and things. And oh gosh, And it's also maybe it's a meeting with one of my business partners or whatever. But what is it that needs to happen? What are the tasks that are super important? So that's one thing I would say that's happened, that's really helping me to prioritize my time. The other thing is, as a leader, one of the things I feel like God's exposed to me is that I'm really good at fuzzy vision, and I need to have clear vision. And because I don't know about you, Joseph, but I'm a thinker. So I'm always up in my head, and I've always got ideas, and I've always got things going on. Can you relate?
No, 100% can relate. I'm always in there thinking, and either thinking or dreaming or analyzing something.
And I find for me, I have about ideas, I have FOMO. I think if I implement one, I'm wondering if it's the right idea. Could it be better? I like to get feedback. I like to build it into my team so that everybody's going forward. And I found that just creates, there's a lot of good in that, but it creates fuzzy vision. And so I've really been focused with my ministry in particular of creating clear vision and communicating it and making sure that, and this is where we're going, and this is the guardrails. Our pastor says about that vision is like guardrails. It tells you what to put in and what to leave out. And that's really helped me. I feel like so often I'm like 80% into this new vision for our ministry, but we've clarified it, and now looking to put timelines on it, how it's going forward. I was talking to a CEO the other day, one guy I really respect, and he said at the first of the year, we put together our vision and we spend the rest of the year implementing it. And I was like, wow, I want to be you. I want to be, let me be, how do I be you, basically? And because that's really what I want. And so those two things I think have been super helpful to starting the day by prioritizing the key things and usually, honestly, there's 3 to 5 things that are maybe on the list that are super important. And the second thing is creating clear vision for those you're leading, and really what that may come down to is clear vision for your life.
I think that's great wisdom, Don. It reminds me of, there's a podcast I listen to frequently, John Acuff, that says all it takes is a goal, and being able to write those goals down to accomplish them is great wisdom. And I love the vision piece of it as well, is that you can be okay as a leader, as someone that's running the business, an entrepreneur. You can be okay with fuzzy vision because you're like, I need to kind of see where we're going, but to lead others, the importance of being able to have the clarity of vision is significant.
Well, and think about this. I mean, before we get off that point, I think it's important. If it's fuzzy to you, it's going to be super fuzzy to those underneath you. And so,
the scripture says, without vision, people they perish.
Yeah, and the flip side of that is what I tell parents a lot is, with vision, the people flourish. So without vision, if you think about it, without vision, the people perish, but with vision, all the people under you will flourish. And wouldn't it? And isn't that something that we all want? We all want the people under us to flourish, whether that's our family, whether that's the people we're leading at work, whether that's a ministry we're leading at church, whether it's Multiply or whatever it is.
Yeah. We have a friend of the ministry, Ben Richards. Well, here's your shout out for you, where he will continue to tell us they're over at Good Maker U, or Branches Mission Lab as well. And literally they say the words, clarity is kind.
Oh, wow. That's good. Yeah.
And it is so simple. And I think that is a good mantra that matches up right with where you're at. Now, Don, you've been doing ministry for a long time, whether it's formalized or whether it's in the context of the church or outside the walls of the church. You've done a lot in that. But when it comes to the Crazy Cool Family journey, I'd love to know, one, just how long have you guys been doing it again, just to refresh my memory. But then, what have you learned in that journey? Like, what's maybe, hey, this is our approach at the beginning, but things have begun to change because we recognize that, man, there's an invitation to something more, something even better. What have you learned?
Yeah. So first of all, I believe God deals with us in months and years and themes. And it doesn't, when somebody comes to me and says, Don, I've been a chief financial officer and I feel like I'm supposed to be a missionary in Africa. I'm like, wow, really? I mean, have you been over there on a mission trip before? Have you done anything, and what do we prepare? Because I believe God, if you look at, like, it took Moses 40 years to get prepared for the Exodus. Paul spent 14 years, getting prepared for his missionary journeys. There's a lot of,
Yeah.
and so ours came out of. I remember another point with that is a corollary point is I believe that we always do mission work. And so,
I agree.
as wherever we are, we don't have to work. A lot of men, I feel like, as they get to be believers and strong believers, there's almost this guilt about working, and we need to go into ministry because that's going to be a higher calling. And it's like, no way, but
Not
we're
true.
always,
Yeah.
we're always doing mission work, and we're always in the world. And so, where is that leading us? For me, if I look at my life over the last 30 years, it's just gradually become more mission oriented. And that's where God led me. And it started with just even in my career, I took jobs and I probably gave up some things from the financial standpoint, but I took jobs, especially with a large family, that balanced with my family. So I didn't, for example, I wouldn't take a job that traveled a lot. Now, that doesn't mean everybody has to do that. That was just me. I had
Of
7
course.
kids. I
That was
wanted
your
to be super
invitation.
involved, and I just felt like the Lord said, don't travel with your job. Eventually, I worked within my community, which further integrated me with my family, because I felt like that that God was calling us to something in, not only did I want to do my family well, but I felt like God was calling us to something in family. Within church, we did children's ministry for 15 years. Because that was a theme. And so when the ministry started coming, it wasn't a surprise. And it started with, you asked how long we've been doing it. It started probably 15 years ago with teaching small group classes. We actually finished the book in 2018, and we started in 2017, and then we formed the ministry. Then we started our online. We have our own podcast, Crazy Cool Family, that's in its 5th year. And then we started our membership site, our free membership site with all our video courses in it, called Basecamp, in 2000. We started that during the pandemic. So it's been going on about 3 years. So we've been doing, and even then I was still working until last year, where last year was when I feel like we really, really launched. So I would say that, we're kind of like a toddler in terms of ministry. We're not a baby still, but we've grown up just a little bit.
Yeah. Well, Don, in that season, what do you think? You've learned how to integrate mission more into just everyday life, but from a bless you.
No, I muted.
What do you feel like you and Suzanne have learned along the way in that journey? What's been a key takeaway?
Well, the first one is, I feel like what's one of the things I've learned over the 30 years of walking with the Lord and really starting the ministry the last few to several years, is to increase the what comes to mind is when Jesus was talking to the guy, and he said, do you want to get well? And he said, increase my faith. And that's a prayer I have a lot, is just, Lord, increase my faith. Let me be willing to step out more and more into who you are, and be willing to, I don't know about you, Joseph, but I came from, when I started out, I was much more opinionated and much less relational, and I would much more give my opinion to whoever would I thought would do it. I've become more of a listener. I've become more relational. Learned a lot of it from my wife, who's like a relationship ninja. But
she is incredible.
And
Yes.
but learned a lot about helping people become their best rather than telling them what to do. Helping them figure it out on their own versus me dictating it to them. So I would say those two things are some things that we've really learned about stepping out in faith, and just, we were talking, we were at the conference this weekend, and one of the things it said is that, I'm actually looking it up here, that it says, this is the only narrative, that Jesus is the only narrative that's worth my heart. And then it said, another one it said was that what if God were to come and uncover the truth of who I really am? and really that I could step into more and more, that my best life is when I step into more and more of who God says I am and have that
Mm.
faith to do that.
Yeah. That's I think that's great. Yeah, that's a great perspective of both having the faith to step in, but also recognizing that, or even just the maturity of being able to say, man, helping somebody else become who they're actually created to be. Like I love that, and it's less about us and giving just good advice and more about letting the King of Kings be the one that changes an individual and leads somebody. The conference that Don's referencing, or even the retreat, was our Wild at Heart retreat. We got a chance to be able to lead here this past weekend, and I'm sure there'll be more opportunities for that in the future. Now, Don, as you look at as you really look at life from a ministry perspective, and you can include business in there as well. But well, I mean, what do you see the next kind of 5 years looking like for you as you look out onto the horizon? Like, what are you dreaming about? What do you desire? Not to let any cat out of the bag by any means, but at the same time, we'd love just to know, like,
Yeah.
what's your heart focused on?
Man, I have a good friend of mine. His name is Mike Downey, and Mike runs a missions organization called Strategic Initiative. Mike, they got 6,000 churches they've planted all over the world, and he's just
Hmm.
a real visionary. And if Mike were to be sitting with us, he'd be in a Hawaiian T-shirt. You wouldn't have any idea who he was, but he's really done a lot for the kingdom. And I remember years ago, I gave him, when we first wrote our book, I sat down with Mike and I gave him our book. And he said, he looked at it and he said, Don, there should be 1 million Crazy Cool families. And it was the first
Hmm.
time somebody had spoken into us of, this is bigger than you. This is bigger than just a small group. And I said,
Mm-hmm.
wow, okay, game on. Okay, all right. And so I just felt like the Lord has said that we are going to reach a lot of people. I don't know if it's 1 million. I don't know if it's 10 million. I don't know if it's 100,000. I don't
Yeah.
know if it's 2. But I just feel like that God wants us to put ourselves out there and with excellence in what we do. We're primarily, Crazy Cool Family is, we pursue relationships, but we're also a kind of a media company. We have a lot of materials out there, and we just really are easily accessible. And so I feel like that we are working hard to continue to, the culture we face is getting worse and worse.
Mm-hmm.
And families and parents are getting more and more questions about how to tackle it. We have
That's
that
true.
answer. We have an answer that we've cultivated over 30 years that I am more confident in than ever as we talk to literally hundreds of families, every year. I mean, I physically talk to hundreds of families. We reach thousands and thousands of people with a message of hope for them. And I believe that message will get bigger. So that's kind of the 5-year plan. The other 5-year plan is to keep paying the bills as we go.
Keep
So,
paying the
so
bills.
that,
That's
that,
wisdom.
that helps.
Those grandbabies keep coming, so it
Yeah,
gets expensive.
exactly.
I think they're going to be more expensive than the
Yeah,
kids probably were.
yeah, exactly. So, but really, it's a huge. You were asking about 5 years. What I've learned over time, over the last 10 years, is I'm not as enamored with business as I was. I used to really enjoy the deal. What I've learned, and it's not a good or a bad thing from, if people are business oriented, for my life and my heart for 5 years, the Lord said, I have no other, the biggest desire I have in my heart is for Joseph Elder to raise godly kids. And for me to do everything I can to do that. And this next season, that's where the Lord, and I want to go with that with everything I have.
I love the passion and the energy that you've already put into that, and you guys have already put into that, and the desire for that much more. Well, Don, I'm going to give you another question on the backside of this, but I'd love to know. I think our audience would love to know, like, how do they stay connected to you? Like, what are the resources they have available? You kind of touched on a couple of them as far as Basecamp and things of that nature. Kind of give us a rundown on some resources that you guys currently have within the Crazy Cool Family ministry.
Yeah. So first of all, the website, crazycoolfamily.com. You can go there and there's everything's there. But I mean, then a lot of people like to go on their podcast and subscribe.
Mm-hmm.
So we have a Crazy Cool Family podcast. Lots of episodes back there. It's just Suzanne and I and whoever our guests are. It's a fun filled. It's like this. We just talk. And then we do have it. So what I lead people to most of all is what you referenced is our free membership site called Basecamp,
Mm-hmm.
basecamp.crazycoolfamily.com. And it takes about a minute to sign up. It's free. And what we do, we have take all of our key principles, our key vision for family, and we put them in short video courses. So it's the same content as our book. It's just put in video form.
Mm-hmm.
Has discussion questions. You can do it with a small group. So many ways to do that. And then just you can follow us on social media, primarily on Facebook and Instagram. So those are if you're on those platforms, then that's a great way to do it. We drip reels in there and different things. We have a great social media presence as well.
Yeah, it's true. Well, we'll make sure to put all those things in the show notes. That way people can click on that, follow, and be a part of everything that you're doing. And Don, I loved it. That kind of the last question, or I think the last question is for somebody that's been in your seat before. I really love how you talked about the more that you can continue to be able to step into ministry, the recognition that the ministry and mission aren't supposed to be just separate from our job, but more integrated within that. And so,
Yeah.
so what would you say as somebody that's been active in business and successful, mind you, to how do you integrate that more and more into your everyday life to where you're like, this is actually just a part of who I am when it comes to the context of mission? What would you say to that man that maybe isn't starting ministry, but he wants to be active in his company that he's either running or a part of?
Man, the first thing we tell parents, first thing we tell people is you got to hear God's voice. If you know the best, let's think about even our family. The best thing you can do for your family is to present them the healthiest version of you that's hearing God. So I would say the first thing I tell young businessmen or women, people starting families, starting out is, man, what's God saying to you? What are you interested in? Suzanne and I found we were passionate about family. And, and so that characterized, we did children's ministry. We taught other parents. We, went to parenting seminars. We, did men's groups and things because we were passionate about family. What are you passionate about? And then just step into that, try something out that, and just see where God leads, because so often, I find that churches try to pull people into things they don't like to do, and they want to take them away from their family, and so and then we wonder why people get burned by the church. It's like, hey, let's do something, and it may be something where you serve, and it doesn't have to be 100% passion. How many people like parking duty? Just some people do. Maybe not everybody, but
I've done it before. It wasn't on my list of top 10 things to do that week, but it's what I got to do.
But I think that there is but I think it's just stepping in and trying things, and then not letting it, work in the balance between family and home and work life and ministry, but and then just seeing where I think God usually a lot of times gives certain themes. I've got a buddy of mine, he loves hunting. He got into a deal called Sights for Christ, and they take underprivileged teenagers on hunting trips. He loves it. Wow. I mean, he's super excited about it, but he's a big time hunter, and that's what he's done. And he has a ranch. And so, so I just challenge guys and men and women to say, what is it that you're passionate about, and where is God leading, and just step into it. And then as we talked about the first of the podcast, what happens when you go deep over time? When you get so many people bounce around churches. Man, we've gotten great blessing from being involved in the same church for 30 years. Our church has had some ups and downs, but we've stayed with it, and that has been a huge blessing to our lives. And then out of that, I've learned where some of my giftings are and where we should step in and serve.
I think that's really good wisdom to leave with everybody, both to go deep with a few things over a long period of time, but then see where your passions and calling line up with what God's asking you to do. I think is just really good wisdom for all of us. And hey, if you're listening to this podcast and either you have a family, are going to start a family, your kids are starting families, whichever position you're in, I recommend checking out the Crazy Cool Family ministry, everything from the podcast to the book to the Basecamp, all of those avenues as well, because I know that you will be blessed from doing those things. And Don, we're just so grateful for your time with us today, and being able to give, even though you said your time's more flexible now, but
It
we
is.
do appreciate the time you've been able to give. Once again, you've been a blessing to me and my family for several years, and so I am personally grateful for that. And hey, multipliers, thanks for joining the podcast again today. Once again, all those details for what Don mentioned will be in the show notes. But hey, keep coming back. We'll be back here in a couple of weeks as we continue to see how we can help each other become all that God's created us to be. So hey, we love y'all, and we'll see you guys soon. Bye bye.